Well, hi guys, welcome, and who dat? I'm Joe. Thanks for tuning in to Rosenfield 10, where I cover our beloved Bless You Boys in black and gold, the New Orleans Saints. Are you a Who Dat fan? If you're a Who Dat fan, subscribe to this channel. Consider me a friend or a coworker who loves the Saints as much as you do. When you see one of my videos, I'm telling you what I think. You let me know what you think in the comments below. I respond to my comments. And today we're going to take our monthly look at the positions of need for our Saints. We're into the off season now, good and strong, and I've got opinions about prioritizing positions of need. Let's talk about it. I've got my buddy Sam down here, uh, Samuel Davis Mills Jr., the mongoose, and he's rubbing on all the tables again, so the camera will move sometimes, but he doesn't want to be held. Oh, goodness. This is my Sambu right here. This is Samuel Davis Mills Jr. He's my sweetheart. He's my sweet patch kid. Yeah, I've got a ton of cats. When you come to my videos, you'll be seeing cats. All right, so let's talk about the cats on the football field. What are the Saints' greatest positions of need as the offseason begins? We all know we need a little bit of everything, but I decided to put a list together, and here it is. And yeah, it's basically the same positions. I've just rearranged them, and we'll just go through all of it and talk about it. And yeah, I have nothing else prepared. I have a chance to record today, so I'm going to give you guys something, even though there's not a lot to it. We'll talk about the whole team and our needs. Hey, that's what we've got to look forward to this off season. So, lots of videos about the draft coming, and right now we're going to take a look at our team as it stands. We all know we need interior offensive linemen, and I've got guard as the number one position of need. Everyone wants to spend a ton of money in free agency on a guard or two. And yeah, if I could allocate $20 million, $25 million to a position in free agency, it would be at guard. I'd go try to get a couple of new starting guards. I'd go try to get the best guards we could get, at least upgrade. Because when Trevor Penning was here, oh man, that was just the beginning of the year. It was just awful. Penning and Ruiz with McCoy in the middle. And, McCoy is a good player and he played 7 games, but our running attack and our ability to pass protect were awful when McCoy was in there. It wasn't McCoy's fault. He just had dead weight Penning next to him. The whole time, Dylan Reduns as a backup was just as good as Penning. Probably better, probably more consistent, especially when he got a chance to start as the games went on, game after game. I think Dylan Reduns was an okay backup, certainly on par with Penning. And Cesar Ruiz at the other guard spot, he just didn't have a good year, and he's always been a hot and cold player. Really got hot right when that contract year was coming up, and yeah, we just don't have really good play from that position, either side. So Dylan Reduns comes in, he got a little better, and I've got offensive line on this list. We're going to talk about backup center and center in general when we get to that. But guard to me, certainly the position of need, greatest position of need, a position that you can go out and get just an average player and, he'll perform better than Cesar Ruiz. Now, that's the way I feel. Cesar Ruiz has been a letdown. According to PFF grades, he's not even worth being a starter. So, to say you go and get just a middle of the road guard in free agency, and you could have a potential better starter than Ruiz. And then on the other side, Dylan Reduns is the same thing. I mean, Reduns at his best probably wouldn't be as good as Ruiz at his best. So yeah, we got to if we could get Ruiz to play at the top of his game, then we would only need one guard. But yeah, I'm saying allocate a ton of money in free agency to guard. I'm also saying draft one. There's enough interior offensive linemen or tackles that you could put at guard where you could get a couple. You got two fourth round picks, two fifth round picks this year in the draft. You can certainly address a young guard at that spot. I mean, if we don't re-sign Dylan Reduns, your backup guards are Torricelli, Simpkins, and then we still have Nick Saldiveri if you want to go and try that again. We traded for Xavier Truss, who's supposed to be able to flex as a tackle and a guard, and we've seen Sherman play guard. And yeah, I mean, I think we can get better than that. I think a third or fourth round pick could come in here. Maybe you have Ruiz as your starter and then a free agent, big free agent signing as your other starter, and then draft one in the middle rounds that can learn and develop. Worst case scenario, just try to shore that up. I'd re-sign Dylan Reduns and have him as my main backup veteran guard and go and get a big name to start at left guard. And then I would try to put some pressure on Ruiz, whether that's Reduns pushing Ruiz in training camp or drafting a guard in the middle rounds and having a push there. I mean, guard play was so bad this year, we were begging for Torricelli Simpkins to play. And he had a game where he had like rated 0 in pass protection. So, yeah, we need to upgrade there above all other positions in my opinion. That doesn't mean spend a first round pick on a guard, but it does mean spending a lot of money on a guard. You need to go and get a starter. And if you can manage to go and get a starter that costs 14 million like Ruiz is, then all the better for you, but you may have to be shelling out a little bit more than that to go and secure a difference maker. And we need an offensive line that's going to make a difference. We need to run the ball. We need to protect Shuck. So offensive guard, number one need, without a doubt. Address it any way you can. Yeah, I'm not even the guy saying you can't get a guard in the first round. I'm not even that guy. Eighth overall pick seems a little steep, but trading down in the first round and then maybe getting a really good tackle at 14 and then moving Fuanga to guard, I'm not against doing something like that. Or drafting a tackle at 14 and playing him at guard. I'm not against that. Saints have only had 10 top 10 picks in the draft in the last 45 years. 10 picks in the top 10. Well, this will be the 11th in 45 years now. But these 10, five of them were offensive linemen, two of them were guards, three of them were tackles. So, yeah, you get a top 10 pick and you draft an offensive lineman, it's not uncommon. Okay. And think of the best guards in the league right now. Think about them. Think about them. Would you like to have that guy on your team? Would you like to have Sewell on your team? Would he be worth a first round pick if you would have drafted him in the first round and he's playing like he's playing? Yeah, he would. He would be. Think of all the first round picks we've had in the last 10 years. I think Sewell would make a better pick than a lot of them. All right, that's my deal. The next position of need, running back. I've succumbed to it. Yes, it was always on my top 8 list, and it's risen on the boards. And at this point, this is the highest I've ever had it, and the lowest I've ever had wide receiver. But I think running back is something we need to focus on big time. Our Super Bowl team, we had Reggie Bush, Pierre Thomas, Mike Bell. Those are three running backs with, three different identities. Reggie Bush was the guy that was the speed element, the explosive element, the X factor element, a guy that could catch, a guy that could make people miss, a yak guy, a speed guy. All right. We don't have that on our team right now. We don't have, and I'm not talking about a guy as talented as Reggie Bush. I'm just talking about that type of guy. When we got rid of Reggie Bush, we acquired Darren Sproles, and Yeah, we were able to do great things like that. We don't have a speed element anymore. Kamara used to be the speed to Mark Ingram's thunder. He used to be the lightning to the thunder. And now Kamara is just, he's 30 years old. So I don't expect Kamara to be a playmaker. I don't expect him to be a difference maker. Definitely not a yak guy, speed guy. So we don't have that type of guy on our team. I look at the Super Bowl team, the next guy, Pierre Thomas, a guy that can do it all, a guy that was really good pass protection and in the passing game receiving, a guy that could follow his blocks and was smart and could make big runs with screens and dump off passes and stuff like that. And he was a really good runner between the tackles. He could follow his blocks. He had patience and vision, running back vision. That was Pierre Thomas's gig. And what a solid guy. Now, would Pierre Thomas be able to handle 20 to 25 carries and be your workload guy? Well, he might have been able to, but I mean, in a dual role, he was special. And it took two running backs. Those games, man, when with that team, we used to give them some Reggie Bush, give them some Pierre Thomas, and sometimes if it wasn't working in the second half, we would just really start to feed Pierre Thomas, and it made a difference. It was that element we needed. The speed element wasn't working. We had to go with a guy that was, more, I guess, had better vision, was tougher, could withstand the 2 or 3 yard between the tackle runs. You didn't want to do that with Reggie Bush all the time. So who's our Pierre Thomas? I like Devin Neal quite a bit, and I think he reminds me of Pierre Thomas. His patience, his ability to read the blocks, even though he doesn't have that top end speed, his ability to pass protect and to do stuff with the ball in his hands after the catch. We didn't get to see a lot of it with Devin Neal, and because he doesn't have that speed element, he's getting dissed on right now as a guy that could never be our number one guy. Well, I don't want him to be a number one guy. I didn't want Pierre Thomas to be the number one guy. I wanted the speed element in Reggie Bush. I also wanted the power back thumper, closer in Mike Bell, the guy that's going to come in there and just pound the team into submission whenever we've got a lead and we're trying to run the clock out. Now we have a Mike Bell on this team too, and that's Audric Estime. That guy, no one wants to tackle him in the fourth quarter. So my analogy is complete. At running back, we don't have a Reggie Bush. I think we have a Pierre Thomas. And Pierre was an undrafted guy. Devin Neal's a 6th round guy. So I think we have a Pierre Thomas type. And I think we have a Mike Bell type. We're missing the Reggie Bush. Now, I don't want to just go and get a guy that's fast and think things are going to happen. I just think that we don't have a guy at running back that everybody else has to fear. And whether Reggie Bush was going to be carrying the ball 25 times or not, teams had to prepare for Reggie Bush. And you got a guy that dynamic where you can use him as an X factor all over the field with motion and sweeps and everything else, and then screens and as a wide receiver split out. You get a guy that talented, and then yeah, you've got somebody the other team's got to worry about. But I don't think you have to go and get the number 2 overall pick, Reggie Bush. You might be able to find a guy like that, maybe even in free agency. I mean, it's just one of them things. A guy like Malachi Corley that came out a couple of years ago, and he's been an epic fail in the league so far. But a guy with that kind of skill set that can play wide receiver and running back and is fast and can make plays with the ball in his hands. That's the kind of running back we're missing. Jeremiah Love would be a great pick because he would not only be your speed element, he would be your run after catch element. He would be can do everything receiving and running the ball. He'd be a guy you'd have to prepare for, and he could probably tote the rock for you 20 times. So yeah, Jeremiah Love would be ideal. But that's my breakdown of the running back room. I mean, I think we've got a decent room. If Kendre Miller can stay healthy, if Reggie Bush if Alvin Kamara can play one more year, And then you still have Devin Neal and Audric Estime. It's not an awful room, especially if you can upgrade the offensive line. Maybe there's some special stuff that could come out of that room with better blocking up front. And not to mention better blocking from the tight ends and the wide receivers, because the running game never really could get going. But Devon Vele as a run blocker was way better than Rashid Shaheed or Brandon Cooks or Chris Olave ever could be. So Juwan Johnson is just not a very good run blocker, and that's something we're going to have to think about. But before we talk about tight end, I've got defensive line here. Now, I've got 8 positions listed here, and it's actually more than that because defensive line counts as defensive ends and defensive tackles. So you really have 9 positions here, and then offensive line is not only offensive tackle but center. So you've got 12 positions here instead of 8. Pardon me, 10 instead of 8. And of course, we need a punter, so that's 11. We need a punter. So there's 11 positions here that we could discuss. Defensive line is pretty important. Now, this is something I didn't know. Our running defense, our run defense overall was not so good when you look at it from total yards allowed. But yards per carry allowed, we were pretty good. And a lot of that had to do with how good we were in those goal line stances and short yardage situations. We racked up a few of them in a couple of games there. And the team got better at run defense toward the end. They got a little more consistent. And not just with yards per carry, but with overall yards. I mean, the last game of the year, we shut down Atlanta, and that was impressive. Bijan Robinson getting 30 something yards total. There's no defense in NFL history that should be able to do something like that. So we performed pretty good against the run at times. Now, this is what was interesting that I didn't really know. I knew Brian Bresee was out. So instead of playing Nathan Shepard and Brian Bresee at defensive end, we were playing Nathan Shepard and Jonathan Bullard, and we were also rotating in Jonah Williams. Now, those players are better against the run in Bresee, and I know that had something to do with it. That had a slight part to do with it. Okay. Brian Bresee just not that good against the run. But here's something else that I didn't know. Davin Godchaux got fewer snaps towards the end of the year. And I believe in the last 3 games, he might have had 15 snaps, 10 snaps, and 10 snaps. We weren't playing him as much. Now, in order to take Godchaux's place, a big dude like that, we were rotating in Christian Boyd, but we were also rotating in John Ridgeway. Now, our run defense was better with less Bresee and less Godchaux. Maybe our best defensive plays against the run happened when Godchaux was out there. Maybe in the 10 plays he gave us, those were exceptional snaps. I just didn't know that, and I think it's interesting. I also think that rating defensive line here as highly as I have it for a need for the Saints is justified. Godchaux's got 1 year left. He's in his 30s. I'm assuming that his production is not as good as it used to be when he was a younger player. And, you know, we did allow a lot of yards on the ground despite being decent on a per carry basis. We need to get better against the run. So getting a nose tackle, a younger one, is necessary, even if Godchaux can play 1 more year well. It's still kind of necessary. Christian Boyd was a 6th-round pick from a small school. That's my description of him. So you get a big body in here in the 3rd or 4th round of this draft, or you go and get, a necessary nose tackle type in free agency, a guy that Brandon Staley needs for this defense to work. You go and get a guy like that somehow, some way, and it's necessary because Godchaux's not going to be here long. Boyd and Ridgeway, I don't think either one of them are your starter. And then at defensive end, Brian Bresee, I'm done. I'm done with it. He had 6, 7 sacks 2 years ago, And I'm thinking, well, he's got a purpose, but now as a defensive end, he's performed better against the run, but just not good enough. And his sack numbers went down. So yeah, Bressee's going to stay on the team. I don't think I extend him. I don't think I give him a fifth-year option. Certainly not. He's not worth that much money. Maybe I try to extend him and try to get him at a decent rate, but without the sack numbers, what are you paying for? We need to upgrade there. Jonathan Bullard's a free agent. Nathan Shepard, we have at least one more year. So maybe you re-sign Jonathan Bullard. He's in his 30s. Yeah, I'm thinking defensive end is the way to go. And a run stopper is something that we obviously need, but we didn't create a lot of pressure from our defensive line versus the pass either. So you go and get a pass rushing defensive end, or you go and get a run stopping defensive end. The team could use it all. Definitely could use a nose tackle. That's why I got defensive line so high here. We need all of it. We could also use run stoppers, pass rushers. I mean, we just need all of it. So you can go and draft three tech defensive tackles to play defensive end. You can go and get big bodied defensive tackles that typically would play nose, and you could slide them over and play them at end sometimes. I think our defensive ends should be 300 pounds. Nathan Shepard and Jonathan Bullard are right around that 280 to 300 type. So, yeah, yeah, we need defensive linemen, and I think that helps. And I've got it ahead of edge rusher because we were productive overall with sacks, and we do have, if Jordan comes back, we do have three starting caliber edge rushers. I do want a different type of edge rusher on this team, and not just Chris Rump, that type, but better. So it is important. But before we get to edge rusher, we're going to talk about tight end. Yeah, free agency's coming. All the tight ends are free agents. We've got Juwan Johnson, Maliki Mataval. We've got Trayton Welch. We've got Mason Pline. That's our tight end room right now. Mason Pline, Trayton Welch. I mean, are those guys ready to be a number two or number three in the league? They couldn't even make the active roster for, majority of the year. I mean, Foster Moreau was hurt, so Welch got a little bit of play. Pline played for one game until he got hurt. And Maliki Mataval got some run toward the end there because of injuries, but Foster Moreau's gone. Jack Stoll is gone. Taysom Hill is gone, likely. And yeah, you've got Juwan Johnson and you've got Mitchell Hayden, who is a good run blocker. He's a restricted free agent. Exclusive rights or restricted, one or the other. So he's a good run blocker, but yeah, you need a couple of tight ends just to fill this room out. You could use a complete tight end. You could also use a run blocking tight end. Morrow was our complete tight end. Jack Stoll was our run blocking tight end. And I would love a run blocking tight end, but you can't tip your hat. So the run blocking tight end's got to be able to produce in the passing game. Otherwise, there's no sense in lining up that way. Juwan Johnson, no sense in lining him up in line. He's no good at blocking. You tip your hat when you bring Johnson out there and you try to. That's what I'm talking about. If you get a run blocking tight end and you try to pass, he's not good enough in the passing game, so you're limited. You get a Juwan Johnson out there who's good in the passing game, and you try to run the ball, you're limited. So you do need a complete tight end. Foster Moreau was a complete tight end. He's just not good enough. We need to upgrade there. So go and get a complete tight end. Even though you're paying $10 million to Juwan Johnson, I still wouldn't be against going and get a big time free agent that can run block and receive. Dallas Goedert, who's a free agent and who produced with Moore before when Kellen Moore was with the Eagles last year. Go and get Dallas Goedert. Let him be our starter, and Juwan Johnson can be our Isaiah Likely type that comes in with Mark Andrews. Uh, that would be nice. Go and spend money on a tight end. I wouldn't mind that at all. If you want to go and get another guy that's not as wouldn't cost as much as Goddard or wouldn't be as old as Goddard. Go ahead, but he's got to be a complete guy. And yeah, I would address it in the draft too, because we're missing so many bodies in the room. I mean, if you can draft a tight end in the third or fourth round, he should have enough ability to come in here and beat out Mason Klein and Trayton and Welch, and Mitchell Hayden. So that's my deal with tight end. I mean, if you go and get a big-bodied receiving tight end like Jawan Johnson, I think Moore can utilize two guys like that too, as Isaiah Likely comes in here with Jawan Johnson. But I really think we need to get the running game going, and part of that is getting a better run blocking tight end. And you can always address that late in the draft, a guy that might not give you anything in the receiving game, but there are downs when you need to run the ball and pick it up. 3rd and 1 comes to mind, and tipping your hat or not, it'd be good to have a tight end go out there that can actually do this and get it done. So, big time need for tight end. And then the two biggest needs that I had for most of the year, edge rusher and wide receiver. The edge rusher surprised me this year. Cam Jordan discovering the fountain of youth in this new defensive scheme with new coaches around him, you know, getting limited snaps and still producing 10 sacks. Cam Jordan wants to come back and be a backup, and he can produce like that, even if he gets 6, 7 sacks. That's great for a backup. Then you got Granderson giving you another 6 sacks. And then you got Chase Young, who had his career year in this system and this defense. He says he's happy. He says he's home. He says he's never felt this good with the team and the coaches, and he was on a Super Bowl team the year before, so before we got him. So yeah, Chase Young is a bargain right now, and getting another guy that instills fear in the defense sounds great to me. But we were in the top 10 in sacks. Grando, when he's hot, is really hot and seems to fit in the system pretty good. I just wish the sack production would steadily increase for Grando instead of, being good one year. He's good for 6 sacks. You were hoping he'd be good for 8. He's good for 6. And like I say, you get another 6 from Jordan, and then you got your double digits on one side, and Chase Young can give you the other double digits, and you're good. But yeah, it would be nice to get a stud. Cam Jordan's going to retire sooner than later, and Carl Granderson is just hot and cold. If you can go and get a big time high draft pick or big money making guy that can come in and be your big time opposite Young, full time, big time, then Carl Granderson becomes expendable. Or Cam Jordan's retirement, doesn't hurt so much. So edge is important to me. There's also some pretty decent edges in the draft this year, early. That's the thing, though. You spend an early draft pick on a position like this. It's not the weakest position on our team currently. So that is what that is. And another position just like it to me is wide receiver. Yeah, it seems like you've got a ton of players. We just picked up a couple of guys from the USFL or whatever, and people are kind of excited about that because of their big. I mean, we do this every year. We as soon as we get a really big guy in camp, we get excited and we think he's going to be the man, and the next thing you know, we cut him, put him on the practice squad, and then we never hear from him again. So I'm not going to get excited about the two guys we just picked up, Alford and whoever. I don't even know. I don't even care. These guys are going to have to do something in training camp. I'm going to have to hear a serious buzz about them, and then I'm going to have to see it in preseason. And then they're still going to have to beat out Trey Palmer and Bub Means and Jalen Polk and Devon Bailey and Chris Olave to make this dang team. So I'm not excited about these younger guys. I'm not going to think we're set at wide receiver because we got a guy that had a good year in the CFL or whatever that I'm not going to go and draft a first or second round guy. I'm sorry. A first or second round guy is not going to end up playing in the USFL. He's going to start in the NFL and he's going to be a contributor on this team. So Wide receiver to me, even though on paper we might be okay, on paper we might be pretty good. I haven't seen Jalen Polk play for this team yet. I haven't seen Trey Palmer play yet. Bub Means, I've seen him try to stay healthy and can't. And then Dante Pettis, we could, I think he's a free agent. We could re-sign him. He's 30 years or 31 years old. But he was a yak guy this year. He was really good with the ball in his hands. He didn't get a lot of opportunity. And, I expect a lot more catches from somebody who had, at the end of the year, the opportunities he did have. Kevin Austin Jr., and Mason Tipton, and, yeah. If Jalen Polk and Bub Means and Trey Palmer, and Vele end up our receiving core with Chris Olave, then having, Pettis and Tipton and Austin as your practice squad, it sounds okay. If Palmer and Polk and Means work out, then the wide receivers there. And we need it, even though we have all those potential pieces that could work out. I don't think any of them are yards after catch guy. Bub Means, no. Jalen Polk, no. He was never that. Not from what I remember. Trey Palmer has speed, but I don't think he was ever a playmaker with the ball in his hands. So yeah, there is still areas in the wide receiving room that we can improve on. Yak for starters, and size. If we get a guy that's 6'2", 6'3", besides our tight ends and Vele, that's something else we don't have a lot of. So wide receiver is important to me, and yeah, you will get a big time playmaker if you grab one in the first 2 rounds. I have it down here as the sixth most important position on the team, but my preference to what's the most important, it shouldn't dictate exactly who we draft, when we draft them, or how much money we spend in free agency when we spend the money. Tight end might not be as big of a need as running back on my list right here, but I would still spend big money on a tight end before big money on a running back, So even though I want a wide receiver that can give us yak, I'm not going to pass up Carnell Tate to draft Zachariah Branch. So, yeah, my preference isn't going to dictate everything. This team could use so much of everything, including cornerback, who's on this list as well. Alontae Taylor, whether he resigns or not, Alontae Taylor's probably the number one cornerback in free agency this year. Nobody thinks Alontae Taylor's going to demand a lot. It's expected that 13 million will get spent on him. I'm thinking 15 million is probably right around the range. And I'm thinking that somebody who really needs an outside cornerback might spend more than 15 on him. Somebody who wants a versatile cornerback. Alontae Taylor has a lot of good things on tape, and his numbers look pretty good. So he's had these years. I hear one of my cats. Hold on a second. This is my Asia girl. She's an actual stray. She was meowing at the door to come in. She doesn't come in all the time. And she's not very vocal, but she was meowing to get in. So I let her in. She doesn't get along with all the other cats. She likes people. She doesn't like cats. And I have 12 cats, but this stray is the sweetest baby right here. Oh, look at this angel right here. So let me do something with her, and I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. Replace the cat with a dog. This is my Tootsie Wootsie right here. My Toots. Such a sweet baby. All right, where were we at? Cornerback, yeah. So you re-sign Alontae Taylor, it's going to cost you a lot of money, but you need a star for this defense to work. And you've also got the situation of Quincy Riley being a fourth round pick and expected to start and be this great cornerback opposite Kool-Aid. I think Kool-Aid is a high level number two cornerback, and I think Quincy Riley is a really good cornerback, a guy that can come in and start and play and do really well. I don't know if I want him to be my full-time starter. And Quincy Riley could develop. I mean, Kool-Aid's getting better, and this defense, we only been in this system 1 year, so these two could be the starters of the future for the Saints, and maybe you don't have to worry about another outside cornerback. But like I say, you lose Taylor, that's basically your starting cornerback because he can play outside too, but that star position's so important. So nickelback, basically, a guy that can do things a safety can do, and Taylor can play on the outside too. So yeah, it's pretty important to me. The star could come from the safety position, and we have pretty good depth at safety right now. I think we're going to re-sign Julian Blackman, and we've got Jonas Sanker and Justin Reed. I think we still have Jordan Howden 1 more year, and Ugo Amadi's still floating around. Davison on the practice squad. I mean, if we get Caleb Downs, he's going to be the guy. He's going to be our star guy, and then I still think you have room for a Sanker and a Reed. Or maybe you re-sign Julian Blackman. You like Blackman and Sanker with Caleb Downs or with Alante Taylor, and then you can trade Reed or something. But I think if you get a really good outside cornerback, that could be a big difference maker. I don't know if Quincy Riley's ready to be the star, ready to be full-time nickel kind of deal. But if you don't re-sign Alante Taylor, you're going to need a star. And I still think Kool-Aid being a good number two, Riley being a really good number three, number two, number three, backup, immediate backup, guy that can come in and play a lot. Yeah, I think you could upgrade on the outside. I think you could in the draft lately when I've been doing mocks, and this is real recent, we get our second round pick and there's still some really good cornerbacks on the board. Whether that's Chris Johnson out of San Diego State or whether that is, now I've seen this happen a lot in the last 2 weeks. Colton Hood out of Tennessee is still on the board. A few times Brandon Cisse out of South Carolina is still on the board. These cornerbacks are pretty good players. They're like first round talent that's just kind of sitting there when we're picking at 42. And although cornerback may not be the greatest need, I mean, if Colton Hood's still sitting there or Brandon Cisse, these are two guys that have first round talent. If they're still there and you draft them, they're probably the most talented cornerback on the team. And yeah, you're getting an upgrade and you're getting a really good player, best player available type thing, even though cornerback's so low here. So I'm kind of expecting our second round pick to be a cornerback, and it's going to be wild and weird when we have all these other needs. But man, the way the boards have been falling lately, all this is going to change in the future. So stay tuned, subscribe to this channel because I will be focusing on the draft quite a bit. And the last position of need I have here is offensive line in general. I'm talking about backup tackle and backup center. I don't like our situation at backup tackle right now. Sherman and Richards, it's just okay, and it was pretty bad at times. Uh, our third tackle was supposed to be Landon Young. We signed him. He was a free agent, and we re-signed him. We signed him to a year, and then he got hurt and couldn't play the year. So Landon Young might be a guy we bring back, and if we do, I think this coaching staff, in their mind, he's a better player than the guys they had to go scramble and get in Richards and Sherman, even Truss, who could play right tackle. We went and scrambled and got those guys. Is Landon Young better than those guys? Maybe, and that's saying something. So that's why I think it's important enough to list here. You draft a tackle in the fourth round. Landon Young was a sixth round tackle. And all these other guys we're talking about, Richards was a fourth round pick. But all these other guys, you feel like a day three tackle could come in here and compete with these guys. So it's Landon Young. There's your example and come in here and be a better tackle than all these guys, and he's a 6th round pick. Yeah, go ahead and grab a tackle in the 4th round. We've got 2 4th round picks, so I think we can upgrade it. Backup offensive tackle. We have our tackles of the future starters, so no one's thinking that tackle is very important. It's pretty important to me. And then, of course, backup center. If you re-sign Luke Fortner, then I think you're okay. And McCoy is your starter anyway, and he's a Pro Bowl type. So, but God, McCoy can't stay healthy. Misses 20 games in the past 2 seasons combined, and that's not good. Now, if you're expecting someone to come in and play center besides McCoy and play the majority of the year, 10 games out of 17 games, that they're going to be your starter, then maybe you want to upgrade from Luke Fortner. It wasn't the train wreck with Luke Fortner this year like it was last year when McCoy got hurt and missed all those games, and we were scrambling to find centers. It wasn't the train wreck that was. But at the same time, I don't think Fortner's the end all be all or re signing Will Clapp. I think you can do better as a backup in the interior of the line at center. Oh, I think it's something you can look at in the draft as well. There's, like I said, I love the center class, so I wouldn't mind spending a 4th round pick on a tackle and a 5th round pick on a center. I wouldn't mind that at all. I also wouldn't mind re-signing Fortner. He was all right. So there you go. That's the 8 biggest positions of need for the Saints as I see it this January 2026. I'm Joe. Subscribe to Rosenfield 10 for more videos about the Saints. Let me know in the comments what you think about biggest positions. I've tried to touch on a lot of the caveats here, which make these top priority for me. You let me know what you think. And until the next one, I'll talk to you later. Who dat?